Welcome to the I Love VB podcast, where we are sharing the stories of local business owners, artists, entrepreneurs, and people just like you that make up our city. This season, we're listening to people's stories, asking them questions along their journey, sharing in the hardships, and rallying around one another to celebrate victories and cheer each other on. Our hope as you listen to these episodes is that people will continue to connect around these stories and that the community of Virginia Beach would flourish.
Welcome back. We're here with an awesome guest today, Mike Provost, founder of Vessel Disposal and Reuse Foundation, a nonprofit doing amazing things locally, doing something that a lot of you might not even realize is a big need that we have in the area. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us about Vessel Disposal and Reuse Foundation, VDRF for short. What do you guys do?
Yeah, so we're a Virginia Beach-based environmental nonprofit, and we have a very narrow mission, and that's to remove abandoned and derelict vessels from our waterways. We also do public outreach and education.
And for our community spotlights, we love spotlighting folks doing really awesome stuff in the area. Tell us what that means day to day, month to month. What are you guys actually doing removing these things from the water?
Yeah, so if you think about Virginia Beach, one of the things that I really love is our waterways. We have tremendous waterways, we have great parks, and just keeping those cleaned up and free of these abandoned derelict vessels is extremely important. So on a day-to-day basis, I'm just engaging with the community. I'm providing folks options for appropriately disposing of their vessel. And then when necessary and with the owner's approval, I'll go out and pull those vessels out of the water.
So it is not appropriate to just leave your boat in the water when you're done with it.
That's correct. Unfortunately, though, in Virginia, there is no easy or affordable way to dispose of an unwanted vessel. So that puts vessel owners in kind of a predicament where they can't sell their boat, they don't want their boat, maybe they can't afford their boat, but what do they do with it? And what we see a lot is they'll take the vessel and they'll anchor it out in a public waterway, and then over time it'll sink. And it's definitely illegal to do it, but it's the situation we find ourselves in.
And it's a combination of late penalties and also, like you said, there's not really other good solutions. And give us an idea of the scope of the problem, because we see the newspaper articles with the big boats, like when there's one in the middle of a popular spot or one that's been there for a while. But tell us about the scope of the problem. What are we dealing with here?
Yeah, so unfortunately, it's a big issue. The U.S. Coast Guard documented about 220 abandoned and derelict vessels in Virginia, and I'll just use the term ADV, that's easier. And so of those 220, I'm sure there's some variance there. I mean, some of the vessels were likely removed, some of them were probably double reported, but it's still a massive issue. So VDRF, we've discovered around 54 vessels to date, and we've removed 27. So the problem is definitely real, and it's definitely big.
So you're halfway through the ones that you've identified that you can take care of currently, but the problem continues to add because people continue to abandon their vessels.
Yeah, so there are documented abandoned and derelict vessels in our coastal zones, inland rivers, lakes, even like Lake Anna, Smith Mountain Lake, all throughout the Commonwealth. You'll find these things if you start looking for them.
Right. And I'm sure a lot of the local boaters can tell you even more than the Coast Guard because they see it every day or they see new ones.
Yeah, so that's actually, I'm glad you brought that up. So I recently did a presentation for Virginia Beach Public Schools with the Environmental Studies program. And when the presentation was done, one of the seniors came up to me and said, "Hey, there's a boat at this location. I know it's there. Would you be able to take care of it?" Fast forward a week later, and we were yanking that boat off the beach and got it removed and disposed properly.
That's amazing. What a great example of education leading to action. Tell us about your story. What brought you to Virginia Beach all the way from the other side of the country? You grew up in Oregon, graduated high school in 2000, and then, like a lot of people, the Navy brought you here. But tell us about your journey from 2000 to when you got here in Virginia Beach.
Yeah, so I grew up with my dad in Oregon, in the capital. It's a place called Salem. Really great upbringing, loved the outdoors, spent a lot of time, hiking and mountain biking, things like that. And then joined the military right after high school. Lived all over, but came to Virginia for the first time in 2009, and then really kind of bounced back and forth for the rest of my career. And we've put our roots down in Virginia Beach. My wife and I have 3 young kids, and we really love the area. We care about the area, and we're going to stay here for the long term.
And tell us briefly, what was that decision process like for y'all with the family? You're retiring out of the Navy, long career. What about Virginia Beach made you guys want to stay and raise your family here?
So quite frankly, it's the water. I always enjoyed being on the water. I'm a captain. I have a maritime training and services company, and just the access to the water and the quality of the waterways we have was the biggest draw for me and our family.
So you guys are settling here in Virginia Beach. You've got 3 kids. You've got your maritime training job. You've got another full-time job. Kids are a full-time job. Each one can be a full-time job. Tell us about the passion behind this new venture that you started back in 2021. What was the driver behind it? You love the water. You're active out on the water. What about it made you want to actually start something official and take real action?
So I never intended to start an environmental nonprofit, but in the summer of 2021, I was on Long Creek with my kids. We're out there boating, and we saw a vessel that was clearly derelict. It was sinking. It was tied up to a tree. And I figured that I could just make a phone call and somebody would come take care of it.
Right, because you see that and you're like, well, this like roadkill or abandoned vehicle on the highway, like somebody from the state's going to take care of that.
That's right. If you have a lawn that gets out of control, somebody from the city will come and give you a ticket or take care of it, right? So I figured I could just call and somebody would come handle it. So I did that. I made a few phone calls and nothing really happened. So fast forward a few more months, and that same vessel moved from Long Creek to First Landing State Park. And so for me, that was essentially a red line. So First Landing State Park, it's the most visited state park in Virginia. It's a registered national landmark. It's really a treasure. I take my kids there, we hike there, we swim off the beaches there. And to have this 35-foot, 20,000-pound hazard on the beach was really my all stop. So I got very aggressive at that point, making phone calls. So I ended up calling 30 different offices. I spoke to 100 different people, and I was sure that somebody would take action. But what I quickly learned is that although the people that I spoke with appreciated what I was trying to do, they didn't have the funding or the authority to do anything about it. And I was explicitly told that if I personally didn't take care of it, nobody would. And so for me, that was, frankly, a little bit frustrating. And I decided right then and there, hey, I'm just going to do this. So we started a GoFundMe page, and me and my buddy Hayden went out there with some chainsaws. We yanked it off the beach, pulled it up into First Landing State Park parking lot with the permission of the park rangers, and just demoed it on site with a bobcat and a grappling bucket.
Tell us about that first removal. You said chainsaws. It was you and your buddy Hayden. Who else helped? How did you get it up into the parking lot?
So Hayden's family has a dumpster truck company, so we were able to use a dumpster truck and some chains and straps and yank it up the beach. And then Towboat US was very generous and helped us tow it from the beach location to the parking lot. But I mean, honestly, it was a little nerve-wracking. It's a litigious environment when you do anything marine salvage. It's risky. I was going out on a limb, but I just could not stand leaving that boat there any longer. It was crazy to me that nobody would be able to take care of this thing, when not only was it endangering First Landing State Park, but there was also 2 clam and oyster farms right next to it. So those farmers and their whole livelihood is on the tipping point. If that vessel breaks free from the sand and goes over their farm, they're going to lose all the time and money they've invested.
Because it's not just physical damage with these boats. What are the dangers to the environment and to people when you've got abandoned vessels just kind of leaking and leaching stuff into the water?
Yeah, so when you see an old kind of derelict, junky boat, you got to realize there's likely fuel, so either diesel or gas. There's oil, there's fluids, there's hydraulic fluids, there's steering fluids, there's greases. Most boats have some type of pesticide if they're a bigger one to control, rodents and things. There's paints. All the bad substances you can think of reside on a big old boat. Furthering that, you have typically glass, trash, plastics, nets, rigging. All of that stuff ends up in the waterway. And then the hull of these boats, it's fiberglass. So it takes a long time to degrade, but it does degrade over time. And then you end up with microplastics in the water. The fish eat the microplastics, we eat the fish. It's really bad for everybody. So these things are, a floating or a sunk, kind of toxic, hazardous thing that needs to be taken out of the water as soon as possible.
And what happened after that first boat? You said it's a 35-foot boat. That's a big one. You get that taken care of. did people start contacting you thinking that you were like the boat disposal guy? Like how did you go from that to officially launching the foundation and doing more?
So as I kind of worked through that first boat, it became really evident to me that this was a problem. And the more I learned and the more I participated in ADV work groups and spoke with the various nonprofits, I realized that nobody was focusing on this matter and it needed attention. And then also, I sort of have an obsessive personality with stuff. And then once I set my mind to something, I'll follow through. So I felt like I was uniquely called to do this. And that's when I established the foundation. We're a 501c3 environmental nonprofit. We have IRS designation, so we're doing everything right. And we're just making as much of a positive impact as we can.
Tell us more about the next 2 or 3 vessels that you were able to remove and take care of. How did you get the tips? Did you see them personally? What were those next few like?
So the second boat we did was another 35-foot kind of cruiser that had been abandoned and sunk down by the Pungo Ferry boat launch. Well known to a lot of the folks south of the Light. But again, nobody was handling it. So I was able to contact the owner of that vessel just via, Google and the magic of the internet. Was able to find him, called him on the phone. He told me, his story and how it came to be, and we were able to offer assistance. He gave us the thumbs up, signed the agreement, and then we removed it with the help of Garbarino Construction. They brought out a 50-ton crane and a grappling bucket. A clamshell, and we were able to take it out piece by piece. So that was boat number 2, and that was in February of 2022. So just a couple of months after project 1. So then I felt like I had some momentum, and then, just reaching out to the community for help. We started picking up some corporate sponsors. Wasserhund Brewing Company was the first company in Virginia Beach that said, you know what, we like what you're doing and we're willing to back you. And they started providing some financial assistance to us. So it was just like a wave of kind of support we were getting from the community.
And walk us through the practical, physical aspect of this. You said you had to get a construction company to help you out because you don't own heavy equipment. You don't have a barge in your backyard that you're able to just float down to these boats. And I would imagine each one of them is pretty unique as far as its situation, the owner. So like, how do you essentially create a case, figure out physically how to do it? Like, what does that whole process look like for a single boat?
So you're absolutely right. Each ADV presents a unique problem set. Now that we've done 27 of them, I feel pretty confident. I understand what needs to happen to get each one out. But those first couple, there was a lot of learning going on. But if you just do your best to limit the negative environmental impact of the removals, so put up a boom, make sure you have fluid containment things on site, make sure you have a proper dumpster, you can do it safely. It's not that hard. Once you have experienced marine salvage guys who are willing to help you out, and you have some wins under your belt, you can pretty much come up with a game plan.
So in your position, you're kind of QBing it. You're coordinating people that have the equipment, that have the salvage experience for each vessel.
Yeah, so I have a few contractors that help us out. So obviously Garbarino Construction, we have Hodges and Hodges Enterprises, and then we have Patriotic Excursions. So between those 3 subs, I can pretty much solve any vessel that is, unless it's a real deep sunk vessel, I don't have the expertise to go after that. But if it's, aground, or if it's sunk in shallow water, or if it's, let's say, 10 feet below the surface, we can handle that. And the great thing is all 3 of those subcontractors, Garbarino, H&H, and Patriotic Excursions, they share my passion for protecting our waterways. So they offer their services to the foundation at a bottom dollar rate. And that means that as we receive donations, we can do more with less.
And it doesn't sound like it is a very cheap operation. I mean, just filling up a regular boat for the day to go tubing on Broad Bay is expensive. Like how much cost are we talking about for just a regular, let's say a 20-foot of abandoned boat? So
it's a real tough to price it out specifically, right? Because there's so many variables. You have the condition of the boat, its location, is it tidal, is it, aground? However, I will say the U.S. Coast Guard determined on a wide average, it's about $14,000 per vessel. If you get the vessel before it sinks, you can do it for a fraction of that. But once they sink, it's about $14,000 per vessel. For context, the most expensive vessel the foundation did was $28,000. That was a 75-foot, 35-ton twin-masted sailboat that was in Norfolk Harbor. And the smallest we've done is an 18-foot bow rider, and that was only a few $1,000s. So there's a lot of variables at play, but it's not cheap. It takes a lot of money, it takes a lot of expertise, and you have to be very deliberate with your planning.
And why do we have these abandoned vessels? You said you're able to get a hold of the owners. Like, they're like vehicles. You register with the state. They know they can track down the owners. What is your experience with the owners of these vessels as far as the reasons they're abandoned or their reaction to what you're trying to do?
So and this has been something I've learned along the way, and it's been a real surprise to me. The people that create abandoned derelict vessels are not what you might necessarily assume. I think people see a boat and they assume, oh, that rich guy's being a jerk and leaving his boat there. But that hasn't been my experience at all. The people have fallen into 5 categories. They're typically either elderly, indigent, physically handicapped, mentally ill, or drug addicted. So in my opinion, these are real at-risk people in our communities, and there is no easy or affordable way to dispose of an unwanted vessel in Virginia, so they're left in a bind. Here's an example. I had a lady whose estranged father passed away, and he left his boat to her in the will, right? She didn't even know her father had a boat, but now she's the owner of a boat. She didn't have the financial means to take care of that boat. It was already sunk. It was thousands of dollars to remove it, but she found herself in a bind. She inherited this boat, no means to take care of it. So what does she do? I mean, even on the best case, if you want to dispose of an unwanted vessel, you're looking at around $100, $150 per linear foot. So if you have a 20-foot boat, 20 times 150, it's not cheap. You have to have some means to do this. Now, if you have a boat on a trailer and you can drive it to the dump yourself, you can do it for cheaper, but the at-risk categories that VDRF is focused on helping don't have that capacity.
And like you said, when you started it all, you're getting no support and no help from the city or the state, who I would assume has a vested interest in cleaning these boats up, but they're just kind of on the sidelines, like, we don't have the resources for this.
It's a situation where it seems the bureaucracy has created a loophole. It's kind of fallen into this weird gray space where you have a lot of really well-intentioned people in the city, state, federal entities. They're very great at what they do, but they don't have the funding or the approval to do this work. So these vessels essentially just sit in limbo, sometimes for decades. Here's a great example. The North Landing River boat graveyard down by Pungo has 13 vessels that I've documented that have been there for decades. And they're just sitting there rotting. They're sitting there rotting, and they're directly adjacent to a natural area preserve. Just think about that. It's ridiculous. A natural area preserve designated to be a safe haven for nature and animals and everything. And then right on the border with that is this illegal boat dumping ground where these boats have been sitting there rotting for decades.
Yeah, that's a huge need. And you're doing this all on your own with donations from friends, family, supporters, like the subcontractors. Where are you now that you've been 27 boats in? What do you need for the next phase? What's your vision for the next year, next 2 years?
So there's a couple of great things that have happened over the past 2 years. I mean, the first is that the Commonwealth of Virginia has allotted $3 million for the removal of ADVs. So VDRF, we've applied for that, and we're in the running to receive about $275K from Virginia Beach, and that'll enable us to do another 18 boats within Virginia Beach city limits. Unfortunately, we can't do anything outside of the city limits with that money, but that'll be a great impact. So we have real big plans once we actually receive those funds to crush a lot of these boats. Outside of that, city/state money, it's just private donors and corporate sponsors. So we're always looking for like-minded corporations that are willing to sponsor us. We can provide positive exposure, obviously charitable contribution letter, things like that. So there's a mutually beneficial opportunity to partner with VDRF.
And what do you have coming up in the coming months? What ways are you fundraising?
Yeah, so we have a really awesome event coming up on the 6th of January 2024. So it's the Sunk Ship Gala. And if you don't know, the Gala 417 is a really cool wedding venue down by Inlet Fitness and like the Porch, kind of in that area, Long Bay Point. So the Gala 417 is hosting the Sunk Ship Gala, and that means that all of the proceeds we make from that event are going straight to the foundation. That's going to enable us to remove many more ADVs from our waterways, and it's also going to be a great time. The fundraisers that VDRF does are always a good time, right? We have live music, which Uncle Jack is a band. They donate their services to the foundation. Truly amazing musicians. We have professional illusionist Tony Jones, who puts on a great stage act and great tableside magic and illusions. We'll have complimentary food and bev, thanks to the Gala 417. It's going to be a really fun environment where people from the community are just going to come together and celebrate locals solving local matters.
And who's invited?
Everyone's invited. We have limited tickets available, but you can go on VDRF.net and buy your tickets. And again, all these proceeds are going straight to the foundation, which goes straight to doing the work.
Now, I want to go back to, because Megan and I have 3 kids. They're in sports, school, all the things. It's a busy life. I've got 1 full-time job, plus the podcast and some other things. You have 3 full-time jobs now, 3 kids. What does the management of the foundation look like? Are you a solo act? Who's stepping in to help? Like, what does that look like for you day to day?
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a strain. I think if anybody out there is considering starting an environmental nonprofit or any kind of a nonprofit, you got to realize it's got to be a true passion project, because it's going to strain you. I mean, my wife also works. Ashley's been very patient with me as I've obsessed about the foundation over the years, and it's been a burden on our family, truthfully. But it's something that we both believe is really important, and somebody's got to do it. So I'm willing to take on that extra burden. And luckily, my other careers give me the flexibility to ebb and flow as I need to. And I have 3 board members, Catherine Jadell, Ross Lieberg, and Brent Polvinale, who are very supportive. And between all of us, we can kind of adapt and make things work to get the work done.
What's your kind of medium-term vision the next 5 to 10 years? I would imagine this problem is kind of an ongoing, like you have identified X number, theoretically you could get all of those removed, but there's probably going to be more down the road. Do you see this as just a nonprofit resource down the road that kind of becomes, staffed with people that can run it and funded with the state and city dollars, and just something that kind of like the VB Rescue Foundation, it has a free EMT service and rescue service in Virginia Beach? Is this kind of how you envision it? Like that level of like, it's just becomes part of the city?
So I think the value that VDRF brings is first the expertise of how to get these vessels removed, because we've done so many now, but then also the speed at which we can accomplish it. So ADVs appear similar to graffiti, right? So if a vessel sinks, or if someone spray paints on your fence and you don't take care of it, more graffiti, more vessels will appear. So the value of VDRF is that we can identify these things. I can find the owner, get an agreement signed, and knock it out very quickly. We have flexible funding because it's private donors and corporate sponsors, and we'll be able to beat some of the more traditional bureaucracies to that vessel. And that's the value, I think, is being able to knock those out quick so that more don't come.
Well, I think that's a good point too. If you're listening and you're like, wow, I've never thought about this before. I don't spend any time out on the water. I'm from this part of Virginia Beach and it doesn't really affect me. Well, no, actually it does. Because if you think about it in terms of graffiti, like you're saying, like if you live in a city that is all of a sudden not being cared for by anybody, really, your property value goes down. The desirability of the area goes down. So it's exactly right. What you're doing to remove these vessels out of the water is positively impacting everyone and everything around you.
Yeah, so the focus of the foundation is the environment, right? Like that's our primary is, hey, getting these environmental hazards cleaned up so we keep the waterways clean and safe. We don't negatively impact the marine life. But if you think about it more broadly, like you said, property values. Virginia Beach is known for tourism. Having these junk vessels litter our waterways, it's frankly an embarrassment, but it also can negatively impact those things. If there's a vessel that's on a waterway unattended and it drifts into your pier and damages your pier, guess who's paying for it? likely you, because the person that created that vessel is not going to have insurance. They're not going to have the funding to be able to repair that. So you could be looking at tens of thousands of dollars in damage. So yes, there's a broader positive impact to doing the right thing, clean these vessels up before they sink.
Have you found or met any other groups doing this up and down the coast? Because I would imagine other states, I mean, you've got a whole coastline on the East Coast of communities with lots of vessels like this. Have you met folks that are doing similar things?
So in the nonprofit space, no. There are some other for-profit businesses that do this type of work, not in Virginia necessarily, but no, I have not engaged with them. There's a nonprofit down in North Carolina that I spoke with in the past, and they would do a lot of, post-hurricane type recovery stuff. But Hampton Roads is home to some incredible environmental nonprofits, and their mission statements are focused towards other noble endeavors. And VDRF is filling that niche of focusing on ADVs. That's
amazing. I love this story of you seeing a need and actively pursuing a solution at really great cost to yourself. I mean, you've got plenty of other things, other good things that you could be putting your time to, but this is, like you said, you feel uniquely called to it. So it feels really inspiring to hear your story. And I hope that listeners, when you feel that tug of something that should be done, step up and do it. What kind of advice do you have for folks who see things, see needs, and see things that they could do to positively impact their community? What advice do you have for them?
I would say don't underestimate the value you can bring to that issue. You might be one person, but with enough determination, you can really establish a following and make a difference. And if I may, so when you think about ADVs, we have to treat the root cause, right? So the fact that we have no easy and affordable way to dispose of these things in Virginia is an issue. So if we want to treat that, we need to follow the example of states like Oregon, Washington, California, and Florida, right? And they have what's called a voluntary turn-in program, or a VTIP. And so right now on our website, I have a petition. I think we have 1,200 or so signatures to establish a voluntary turn-in program where, let's just use an example, your grandfather has a vessel, he's not able to take care of it, he can't sell it because of its age, he has no option. In this case, he could leverage the VTIP to turn his vessel into the Commonwealth where it could be removed and disposed. What that's going to do is save us millions of dollars in taxpayer money, because once it sinks, the cost for removal and disposal quadruples. So we have to get ahead of the problem and remove these things before they sink and provide a no-cost pathway for people to do the right thing.
And you're also identifying some pretty cool reuse opportunities for these boats, right? Tell us about the one about fiberglass that's probably not something that people would have thought.
Yeah, so unfortunately, fiberglass can't easily be recycled. It can't really be reused for much. When I pull these boats out, we scrap the metal, so we're able to do that part of the reuse. But Rhode Island had a partnership with, I believe, NOAA, where they took fiberglass from vessels, they cleaned it, and they ground it up into 2" minus recyclate. And then what you can do is, if you don't know, making cement is a really dirty process, and you have to get the kilns extremely hot. So the way they do that now is either with natural gas or coal. But you can burn fiberglass recyclate in those kilns, and it has about 14% less emissions than coal. So it's an above ground resource that you can harvest. You can burn it in the kilns. You're replacing that natural gas or coal consumption. And then you're also solving the issue of all these boats laying around. So that's the long-term vision of VDRF, is to be that full circle. I've had several conversations with a cement factory in Virginia, so we have all the steps we need in Virginia to accomplish this. It's just a matter of getting some type of grants to subsidize the cost, because it is logistically intensive to do it.
Mike, how do we get in touch with you, follow, give? What are ways to get involved with VDRF?
Yeah, so VDRF.net is our website. That's the best place to go. We're on Instagram at VDRF_VB, Facebook as well. So yeah, if you follow the social media platforms, and I like to tell people there's really 3 ways that you can help VDRF, right? You can donate, which is obvious. We can always use the charitable contributions. You can advocate. You can share our posts. You can talk to your friend groups and try to broker introductions between VDRF and folks that want to help. Or you can participate, things like coming to our fundraisers. Those are the 3 ways you can help us out: donate, advocate, participate.
Love it. Thank you so much for leading the way and finding a really big need and a solution to make a difference for the city. We appreciate what you're doing. Keep it up.
Thank you very much. We will.
All right, guys, thanks for joining us here on the podcast. Be sure you subscribe to the I Love VB podcast so you can catch the latest episodes. We'd love it if you would take a moment, leave a 5-star review, and share your favorite episode with a friend who would enjoy listening. These are both ways that you can help support the people that you're listening to and the businesses in our community. And as always, connect with us on Instagram, Facebook, and on our website. And we look forward to being together again on the next episode of the I Love VB podcast.